Live to Vigyan Bhavan, where Finance Minister Arun Jaitley is addressing the International Global Conference on Sustainable Development.
Swatantra Kumar, the Attorney General, and my colleague Mr. Javadekar have already mentioned. Over the last 3 decades particularly, different wings of Indian governance have also gathered a considerable amount of experience in this area. Some 3.5 decades ago, when the judicial institution became active, with its initial judgments on environmental protection, questions were raised as to how serious the executive is in this regard. But if we look at and dissect the role of each one of the institutions, the legislature has come out routinely with legislations. The executive has laid down what should be the optimal standards to be maintained. Credit must also go to the civil society, which normally is in these matters ahead of the other institutions in highlighting the dangers of what we are doing to the environment and eventually doing to ourselves. And then from initially laying down principles like the precautionary rule or the polluter paying, at times taking harsh action and closing down the industry till they fall in line, eventually the creation of a specialized institution like the Green Tribunal. I think institutions in this regard have considerably matured. And as the Environment Minister mentioned, the governments are also conscious of this. And that is one of the reasons we use various instruments, from legislation to rule making to even fiscal policy, in order to see that we can make our contribution in this regard. In fact, this year particularly, I was motivated essentially by 3 considerations when deciding where to raise the taxes. Now, obviously, commodities which common people deal with, you can't make them costlier. But products which can have a hazardous impact on health had to be discouraged, and therefore you raise taxes even as a deterrent with regard to those products. Products which are damaging to the environment. And I think it's here we must realize the full impact of what has been done. It's not only that in coal and in fossil fuels, India has raised a clean energy or an environmental cess. Our policy, even with regard to hydrocarbons, has been guided substantially by this consideration. And therefore, amongst countries in the world which are consciously trying to create a deterrent, even on hydrocarbons, I think one of the key considerations is also environment. Revenue raising could be a secondary consideration. When we rationalize the subsidies, particularly with regard to the cooking gas, the LPG, the Prime Minister had given a call for the Give It Up campaign, because the wealthy are certainly not entitled to subsidies. And therefore, from the entire money that we've been able to save from that rationalization, over the next 3 years, we intend the bottom layer of 5 crore families in India to get the benefit of the initial installation at state expenditure significantly. The first phase will get it this year. It's not merely a social sector program, it's also a very important environmental program. Experts have estimated that the adverse impact of each chula, as is conventionally used, on human health is equivalent to 400 cigarettes. And therefore, each one of those families which at substantially state cost, and this is going to be a huge 20% of the bottom of Indian society. We have 25 crore families, so 5 crores out of them who are not a part of this mainstream would get the benefit over the next 3 years. Each one of them will switch over. And therefore, each one of these campaigns, I think in some small way, extend. I have, for instance, on hybrid and electrical vehicles, continued with the exemptions or the reasonable rates which are levied on them.
Welcome back to the studios. That was a live telecast from Vigyan Bhavan, where the International Global Conference on Sustainable Development Goals is on. You were just listening in as Finance Minister Arun Jaitley was speaking on how the government is doing its best to contribute in various ways, like through levying of an environmental cess and other methods, stopping subsidies, for example, so that LPG benefits can be given to those who are poor, and in order to ensure that India contributes in the best way that it can towards sustainable development goals.